Well, hello, Confirmands. Welcome back. It is nice to see you again. I hope that you are well. Last time we talked about Jacob and his brother Esau. We talked about Jacob getting a new name, Israel. We talked about Jacob having 12 sons, Israel having 12 sons. So it's the 12 tribes of Israel. And I promised you that today we were going to talk about that family and about one of those sons in particular, Joseph. We're going to slow down. We're going to spend 2 weeks talking about Joseph. There is so much here for you to get your head around. These stories, as we've said before, a lot of the stories echo through the Bible. These stories clang. They really make a lot of noise, and there's parts of them that show up down through the other stories. So if you want to understand what Jesus is talking about, if you want to understand more about who God is and about God's faithfulness and about bad things happening to good people and what does it mean and how do we understand hard times in life, these are stories that we're supposed to have in us, that we use, that we mine, that we pull out of those stories in order to understand what's happening to us. So a lot of the stories that we're going to cover are told in G-rated versions in the Eggemeyer's Bible Story book or in other Bible story books if you're using, but it would do you a world of good to read them out of the Bible yourself. And this week we're only doing 5 chapters. It's just 5 chapters of Genesis. If you just did a chapter a day out of the Bible, you would get the straight version of these stories, and that would help you tremendously. So you're going to hear me tell them, you're going to read them in your Bible story book, you're going to read them out of the Bible, and suddenly we're well down the road to these stories being part of the fabric of your imagination, part of the fabric of your heart. So pay attention, learn the stories, remember the stories. Here we go. So when we left off, we have Jacob was on his way back to where his father was. He's on his way back to this land of promise. He's on his way back with his family, his 2 wives, his 2 maids. And we said at the end last time that on the way, his favorite wife, there it is again, his favorite wife gives birth to a little baby boy, Benjamin. She dies in the process. And so he returns home finally with his wife Leah, with his 2 maids, with 12 sons, one of them just a newborn baby, and with his daughter Diana. And the family goes to work. They do the family business. They're herders. So they follow the herds around where the grass is, where the water is, and Jacob continues to grow in wealth and in power and possessions, more and more slaves, more and more servants, more and more animals, and the boys grow up. Now, it is not a perfectly happy family because Israel loves Joseph better than anyone else. And he doesn't hide this, that he treats Joseph differently than he treats the brothers. He gives him much less work to do. Joseph tattles on his brothers, and instead of being told, don't tattle on your brothers, like happens in any sensible family, Israel acts on whatever Joseph says. Joseph can say anything he wants about anybody, and Joseph will act, and Israel will act on it as if he knows that that's the truth. The brothers resent that to no end. Israel gives Joseph a coat with long sleeves, a many-colored coat with long sleeves. You can't work wearing such a garment. So the gift is, not only are you my favorite, but you don't have to work anymore. That your brothers will have to work, but you don't have to work. And that doesn't go over well with the brothers. And then there's something else that you need to know about Joseph. He's one of these annoying people that wants to talk about their dreams. Do you know someone like this? Someone that thinks that you are terribly interested in hearing about their dreams? Well, Joseph was that guy. So one day, the brothers are all eating, getting ready for the day, and Joseph says, "Who wants to hear my dream?" And the brothers have absolutely no interest in hearing Joseph's dream, but he tells them anyway. He says, "We're all out in the field cutting grain." And they're like, "Yeah, when have you ever cut grain in your life?" No. Listen, we're all out in the field cutting grain, and we make shocks of grain. If you've read the Little House on the Prairie books, you know what this is. But when you cut grain, one of the ways before we had the modern threshing equipment that we have, you'd put the grain into shocks, into bundles. and you'd tie the bundle together, and then you'd put together 10, 12 of these shocks of grain, and then you take another shock of grain and you'd put it over the top like a roof, so that if it rained, that grain would be damaged, but the ones below wouldn't be until you could thresh that grain, which was all done by hand. So Joseph's dream here is that they're all out cutting grain. They make shocks of grain. He says, my shock of grain stood up straight in the center of all your shocks of grain, and all your shocks of grain bowed down to my shock of grain. You can imagine how that went over. The brothers were not thrilled about this dream, and they resented Joseph for telling it. But of course, Dad thought it was awesome. Oh, what a dream. What a boy. I love my Joseph. Did not go well. A few days later, Joseph has another dream. He says, who wants to hear a dream? Nobody wants to hear a dream. Okay, good, I'll tell you. So I dreamt that there were 12 stars and the sun and the moon. And one of the stars was me. And all of your stars, because that's who the other stars were. The other stars were you guys. The other stars, they gathered around my star and they all bowed down to my star. Then the sun and the moon bowed down too. And here Israel had enough. He goes, what, sun and the moon, me and your ma? We're supposed to bow down to you too? Come on. We're not bowing down to you. Knock that off. Whoa, you're such a good boy. I love you. Yeah, it was just goofiness. The brothers, they didn't like it at all. So this was the family life, that we had this one spoiled kid that could do no wrong. He was the favorite of his father. He had these goofy dreams. He insisted on telling everyone his dreams. He tattled on his brothers. They hated him for it. And that was life. So a famine came, and these are herding families. They herd animals for their livelihood, and famines are really, really scary. If there's not water, if there's not food, the animals start to die. So they go further and further out looking for food, looking for grazing land, and looking for water for the animals, and they find some. And so Israel sends the boys, except for the baby and Jojo, he sends the other 10 out to live rough in the wilderness with the animals while the famine lasts. So they're unhappy. And after a few days, Israel starts to wonder if the boys might be messing around out there. I mean, these are all grown men by this time, right? And Israel sends Joseph out on an errand to spy on his brothers, and then to bring back news about whether or not his brothers are doing their job right, taking care of the flocks and the herds right, spending their time gainfully. So the brothers are way far away. Joseph travels several days to where they are. It's not hard to follow where they are. The grass is all trampled, and the whole herd of sheep and goats and camels and donkeys has been over this ground. So Joseph follows, and the guys are sitting around a campfire, and they're eating, and they look up on the hill, and they see that stupid coat coming over the hill. And they're not happy. They know what's going on. They know he's there to spy on them. They know it's Joseph. And Simeon, one of the brothers, says, you know what we should do? We should kill him. And the other brothers say, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny. We should kill him. And Simeon says, I'm not kidding. We should kill him. And the other brothers say, well, okay, just for the sake of argument, what are you thinking? And Simeon says, we take that stupid coat off of him. We rip it up a little bit. We dip it in goat's blood. We bring it back to Pop and we say, Pop, it looks like a lion got Jojo. This is his coat. We're so sorry. Incredibly wicked, huh? So the brothers decide that that's what they're going to do. But Reuben, the oldest brother, he has a different idea. He says, no. Simeon, I like where your head's at. I like the goat blood. I like the lion. I like the crying when we go to see Pop. I like all of that. It's the killing our brother part that gives me a little bit of pause. I don't think we should actually kill him. I think we should strip him, rip up the coat, dip it in blood, and then we'll just... See that old well over there? let's just throw him down that old well and let him starve to death. That way we're not really killing our brother. Okay, now we're just going to take a time out from the story here. Morally, if you throw someone down a well so that they starve to death, you're not better than the guy who gets a sword and kills someone, right? But Reuben had a plan. Reuben wanted to get Joseph down that well. When the brothers were occupied with something else later on, Reuben wanted to pull Joseph up out of the well, send him back to Dad, and then Dad would have two favorite sons, Joseph and Reuben. That's where Reuben's head was at. So you got this family that's all taking advantage of each other and hurting each other and wishing each other harm. But the other brothers don't know that's what's in Reuben's head. They buy this thing about it's better to throw him in a well than it is to actually kill him. So Joseph comes to them. They grab him. They rip his robe off of him. They tear it up. They dip it in goat's blood, and they throw him down this well, and they leave him there to die. Now, they're all having a little bit of a party later on. Joseph screaming from that well over there, "Hey, guys, come on, let me out of here. This ain't funny, guys. Come on, let me out of here now." They're just ignoring him. And some slave traders come down the road on their way to Egypt. "How you boys doing?" "Good. How are you?" "Good. How's business?" "Fine. You got anything you want to sell or trade?" "No, nothing." Simeon says, Wait a second. We got that slave we could sell." And the other brothers say, "What are you talking about? We don't have any slaves." Yes, we do." "No, Simeon, we don't have any slaves to sell." "Yes, we do. That bad naked slave that we put down the well a few hours ago, we could sell that bad naked slave to these guys. We could get some money out of this." And the brothers go, "Yeah, we could do that." Now, Reuben has stepped out. He's not around right now. I don't know what he's off doing, but he's not there. And the other brothers pull Joseph up out of that well, and they sell him to the slave traders. And the last they see of their brother is him going down the road saying, Guys, come on. This ain't funny, guys. When Reuben comes back, he cannot believe what his brothers have done. But now we got to stick with the story, right? Now we all got to lie together. We can't tell Pop the truth. We found Jojo's coat. It was ripped up. It looks like a lion got him. We're so sorry. So they go back and they sing this song for their dad, and it breaks his heart. He weeps, he mourns the death of his son. He cannot believe that he's lost his son. And all of his energy and all of his attention falls on Joseph's younger brother, Rachel's other son, Benjamin. So the 10, they don't go up in their father's esteem. Joseph is replaced by Benjamin, and the brothers have to live with this wicked, wicked thing they did. Now, Joseph gets brought down to Egypt, and there's a slave market in Egypt, and he gets put up on a block, and he gets sold to a guy named Potiphar. Potiphar was a gentleman farmer. A gentleman farmer is defined here as someone who farms but doesn't need to farm because they have plenty of money from their day job. Potiphar's day job was that he was Pharaoh's executioner. Pharaoh was the king of all Egypt, the most powerful man in the world. Potiphar was Pharaoh's executioner. He killed people for a living, and he was a gentleman farmer. He buys Joseph, he brings him to his farm, and he puts him to work. Now, Joseph believes that the promises that were made to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob will one day be his too, because God has promised. And even though his life is awful right now, he believes that that doesn't mean God's promises aren't still good. That God knows where he is in Egypt as much as he knows where he was when he was in Canaan, and that God's promises aren't going to be undone by something simple like being stripped, thrown in a well, sold as a slave, and then sold to Pharaoh's executioner. He still trusts that God is with him and will take care of him, and he promises himself that he is going to be faithful to God's promises, and he's going to live under God's promises, whatever's going on in his life. So he goes to work. and he does his work well. He's a happy slave working for Potiphar. And Potiphar notices that Joseph does things well, that he's got a good work ethic, that he does things properly, and Potiphar puts him in charge of a couple of other slaves. And they do their work well. Everything goes good when Joseph's in charge. And so little by little, Potiphar gives Joseph more and more responsibility. More and more slaves are reporting to him. More and more things at the farm are under Joseph's purview, at his supervision, his authority. And Joseph is very quickly the second most important man on the farm, second only to Potiphar himself. Joseph's running everything, and the farm is making more money than it's ever made. Things are going smoother than they've ever gone. There was just one problem. And here, let's just apologize right up front to the 6th and 7th graders watching this. This is where it goes hard PG-13R, right? It gets icky really, really fast. So Potiphar had a wife, and Potiphar's wife notices Joseph and thinks he's yummy, and thinks, wouldn't it be nice to have sex with Joseph while my husband Potiphar is away killing people? And she starts winking and suggesting to Joseph that the two of them could have a lot of fun while Potiphar is away. And Joseph isn't hearing it. He doesn't want anything to do with that. This is a married woman. Did we mention that Potiphar's job is killing people? Absolutely not. God doesn't want you to mess around with someone else's wife. Joseph is not on board, and Potiphar's wife is unhappy about it. And the longer it goes, the more she wants Joseph, and the more she wants what she wants because she wants it when she wants it because she wants it, right? Something is going to blow here. It's going to blow ugly. So one day Potiphar is gone, and Mrs. Potiphar asks Joseph to help her with something, and while he's with her, she grabs him, tries to trip him into bed. He's not interested in having sex with Mrs. Potiphar. He pulls away. His robe that he's wearing rips off in her hand. He runs out of there naked. People see him run out of there naked. And she is there, humiliated, holding on to his robe, and she does something despicable. She starts screaming that Joseph tried to rape her, tried to take advantage of her sexually without her consent. Of course, it's a lie. But when Potiphar gets home, you got a lot of people who saw Joseph run out of her room naked. You got her holding on to Joseph's robe, and you got her saying that he tried to rape me. And Potiphar was mad. Oh, he was angry. Now, he could have just killed Joseph because Joseph is a slave, but he decides to do something else instead, something meaner. He throws him in prison for the rest of his life. Goodbye, you. Good luck. Now, being in prison doesn't change that God has made promises to Joseph and to that family. And so Joseph goes to work in prison. Prison in those days was a place where you worked till you died. Joseph goes to work, and he does his work well. The warden of the jail sees that Joseph does his work well, puts other prisoners under Joseph. Those guys are more productive and more peaceful than they've ever been. Soon Joseph is running the entire prison. And the warden just counts his money. Everything is going great. Now, one of Joseph's jobs in prison was to intake new prisoners. So when new prisoners got brought to the prison, Joseph would talk to them, figure out what they could do, where they could work, what they should be up to, and then he would make that happen. So one day there's two new prisoners that Joseph has to interview, and these are prisoners who have both worked for Pharaoh. One was Pharaoh's wine taster, which is a position of incredible responsibility. Now, because, if you're going to kill Pharaoh, you're not going to attack him with a sword or a spear because he's surrounded by enormous guards. Now, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to slip poison into his food or into his drink so that Pharaoh will die and you don't get killed yourself. So there was always someone who would taste the king's food. That if the king was going to eat something, there would be someone who would taste everything the king was going to eat and drink out of the cup that the king was going to drink from, so that if there was poison in any of those things, that person would die and not the pharaoh, not the king. But of course, that would be the only person in the kingdom who could then poison Pharaoh himself, right? So the wine gets brought to me, I taste it, there's no poison in it, Pharaoh, everything's good. I could poison Pharaoh after I've tasted the wine. So it's a position of incredible responsibility to be Pharaoh's wine taster, cupbearer. The other guy was Pharaoh's baker, and they've both been dropped into prison. Pharaoh's mad at both of them, and he sent them both to prison. So Joseph, does intake. He figures out who they are, puts them to work. Everything's going good. Very shortly thereafter, though, Joseph notices that these two guys are depressed one morning at breakfast at chow, and he says to them, "What's up, boys?" And they say, "We both had really troubling dreams." And they can barely get the words out of their mouth, and Joseph's like, "Dreams? I love dreams. Tell me your dreams." I told you, he's kind of an annoying guy that way. So the guys, what are they going to do? You could work or you can tell Joseph your dreams. It's better to tell Joseph your dreams. So the cupbearer goes first, and he says, "All right, so last night I had this wild dream. It was so vivid. I remember every bit of it. That I'm asleep and suddenly, I'm holding Pharaoh's cup and this vine grows up and it has bunches of grapes on it. It has 3 bunches of grapes, and I squeeze each bunch of grapes into Pharaoh's cup, and then I give the cup to Pharaoh and he drinks of it. And then I woke up, I don't know what it means, but it means something because I woke up just frantic." And Joseph says, "Yes. God has told me what your dream means." And the cupbearer's like, What? "Yes, God has told me what your dream means. The 3 clumps of grapes are 3 days. In 3 days, the Pharaoh is going to remember how much he likes you, how much he trusts you. He's going to send some guys here to pick you up and to bring you back to Pharaoh's service." The guy says, "Really? Oh, that's amazing." And Joseph says, "All I ask is that when you're back in Pharaoh's service, you tell him about me. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be in this country. I shouldn't be in this jail. I didn't attack anyone. I certainly didn't try to rape anybody. I'm not supposed to be a slave. I'm supposed to be back in Canaan. Could you just tell Pharaoh about me and get me out of here?" And the cupbearer was like, "Absolutely. Happy to help a friend." Now the baker is just jumping out of his skin. He is so excited because he had a dream too, and he thinks he's figured out what his dream is. He goes, "I had the same dream, same exact dream." And Joseph's like, Whoa. I'm the professional here. Tell me your dream, and I'll let you know what I think. And so the baker says, "Well, it's easy. I baked a bunch of Pharaoh's favorite stuff. I made 3 baskets of Pharaoh's favorite stuff. I put the baskets on my head. I'm walking to bring them to Pharaoh. Birds come and they land in the baskets. They're eating stuff out of the baskets. And then I woke up. I didn't know what it meant, but now it's just like his dream, right? 3 days and I get to go back to making biscuits for Pharaoh." And Joseph's like, "Ooh. Yeah, no. See, this is why we don't let amateurs talk about dreams, why you brought it to a pro like me. God says that that's not what's going to happen. In fact, 3 days from now, you're going to meet my old boss. Yeah, the 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh's going to decide that he never really liked your sticky buns anyway. He's going to send a guy named Potiphar to meet you. That ain't going to go good. Potiphar is going to cut off your head. He's going to stick it on a big stick like a lollipop. The birds are going to come and they're going to eat the flesh off your skull." Sorry. Well, that's something of a mood kill right there, of course. But 3 days later, that's exactly what happened. Potiphar and his boys showed up. They grabbed the baker. They hustled him out of town. They cut his head off and put it on a stick. And another group came for the wine taster, and they brought him back to Pharaoh's service. And as he went, Joseph is yelling after him, "Remember to tell Pharaoh about me." "I will, Joseph, thank you." "No, really, don't forget. How could I forget? You've been great to me. You've been like a father to me. No, really, don't forget. I won't forget." He forgot. The wine taster didn't tell Pharaoh about Joseph that day, that week, that month, that year, until one night Pharaoh had a dream and woke up screaming, and nobody could interpret Pharaoh's dream for him. No one had any idea what it meant. And the wine taster went, "Oh, Pharaoh, yeah, I can help here." And Pharaoh said, "You do dreams?" And the guy said, "No, not me, but there's this guy. I was supposed to tell you about him. That's my bad. There's this guy, his name's Joseph. I met him in jail. He's really good with dreams." Pharaoh's like, "Get him here now." So in the middle of the night, They go, they get Joseph, they bring him in front of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, I hear you're good with dreams. Joseph says, not me, but God. God sometimes tells me what the dreams are. Pharaoh says, I don't care. Let me tell you the dreams. You tell me what they mean. That's the deal. You understand? Joseph says, bring daddy the dream. Pharaoh says, I had 2 dreams. In the first dream, there were 7 cows. These were fat, beautiful cows. These were the nicest cows that anyone has ever seen anywhere. These are cows that you could put in the state fair and walk away with the purple ribbon. These are beautiful cows. Then, up out of the Nile River come 7 of the scraggliest, most awful, most hideous, boniest, scabbiest cows you ever saw anywhere. These cows look like they're already mostly dead. And they ate the fat cows. And they were as skinny and as awful as they were before. And I tell you, I woke up screaming. Took a long time, but then I went back to sleep and I had another dream. And in my dream, 7 stalks of grain grew up. And each one, had heads on it that were rich and full of grain, beautiful grain, beautiful grain. A farmer would love grain like this. And then there were 7 other heads of grain. I know this is weird, hard to visualize. It was hard to experience, I'll tell you. There were 7 other heads of grain that were just scrawny and bare and weak and skinny and diseased, and they ate the full heads of grain, and I don't know how they ate them, but they did, and they were just as scrawny and awful as they were before. And again, I woke up screaming. It was terrible. I don't know what these mean. I'm going out of my mind. The cupbearer says that you're good with dreams. What do you got? And Joseph says, well, it's interesting because God has given you the same message in these 2 dreams, and God has told me what these dreams mean. And Pharaoh says, I don't like the suspense, just tell me. And Joseph says, now the 7 fat cows and the 7 rich ears of grain are 7 years. There's 7 years of plenty that's coming to Egypt, where the harvests are going to be record-breaking every year, where there's going to be food that people can't even imagine eating, that it's just going to be great, that you've never seen such fruitful times. But following that are going to be 7 years of famine that are going to be so bad that people won't even remember the good times by the end. The famine is just going to swallow all the joy and all of the plenty and all of the hope that people had during the good times. It is going to be grim. And Pharaoh says, well, what do I do? And Joseph says, well, that's why God sent you the dream, so you could prepare. Get the smartest guy you got in the kingdom, whoever he is, whatever he's doing, pull him off that, put him in charge of a new national project. Pharaoh's thinking, I think I know the guy. Joseph says, tell him for the next 7 years that his job is to collect excess food and to store it safely. That you got to give him all of the resources he needs. Let him build silos. Let him build, structures and cubby holes. That wasted space under the stairs. Any place that you can put grain, he should put it for the next 7 years so that when the bad times come, he can open the storehouses and he can feed Egypt. And Pharaoh says, that is a great idea. And Joseph says, again, pick the smartest guy you got. Pharaoh says, I got the guy. You do? Yeah. Who? You. Joseph gets put in charge of this project. Pharaoh takes a necklace off his own neck, puts it around over Joseph's head, around Joseph's neck, tells everybody, quit glowering over there, Potiphar. This is Joseph. He is the second most important person in the world. I'm number 1. He's number 2. If he says jump. You do whatever he says. You do it immediately when he says it, or you're going to have a problem with me. Are there any questions? And there are no questions. So Joseph goes to work, and he spends 7 years collecting the excess foodstuffs of Egypt. He puts it every place. He builds storehouses, he builds barns, he builds silos. He puts it in that empty space under the stairs. Any place you can hide food, he hides food. Any place you can put food, he puts food. He works for 7 years. And then the famine comes. And Egyptians start to be hungry. And Joseph opens the storehouses and begins to feed the people of Egypt. Now, the famine doesn't just come to Egypt. It also comes to Canaan. And in Canaan, Joseph's brothers and their families begin to be hungry. And they hear a rumor that there's food in Egypt. And they say to Dad, "Hey, Pop, we hear that there's food in Egypt." And so they go. Except Benjamin doesn't go. Israel says, I lost my JoJo. I can't risk Benjamin. You 10 guys, I like you, but you're kind of expendable. So you guys, here's some money, here's some bags, here's some animals. You guys go down to Egypt and buy some food for the family so that we don't starve to death. So they head down to Egypt. And when they get there, they get brought into a big fancy building. Then there's a guy up there on the top of the steps. He's wearing white, he's clean, he's fancy, he's got a nice beard, he's got a big necklace on, he's got people fanning him, he's got a bunch of guards protecting him. They stand at the bottom of the steps and they bow down to him. Of course, it's JoJo up there. Of course, he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. He's changed an awful lot in the years that he's been gone. He's a grown man now. He's highly educated. He's clean. He speaks perfect Egyptian. Everyone bows to him. They have no reason to see their brother in him, and so they don't. But Joseph knows who they are. And Joseph decides to find out if they've learned anything in the subsequent years. And he says, "Those men are spies. Arrest them." And the guards around him snap to attention, and they boom, 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 boom. And they grab a hold of those brothers, the 10 of them, and they hustle them off to prison. Now, the brothers are in prison. And they know why they're in prison. They think that they're being paid back for what they did to their brother, selling their brother as a slave. And they cannot believe how this has turned out for them. And they are so, so sad. Joseph lets them sit for 3 days, and then he calls them back and he says, "I think you're spies, but change my mind." And the brothers say, "Oh, sir, we're not spies. We're 12 brothers." And Joseph says, "Can't you even get your story straight? There's 10 of you there, right? Let's start with that. There's 10 of you. There's not 12. Right. We had an older brother who died, and the baby is still at home. But the 10 of us are here. We're here to buy food. That's all we're here to do. We're so sorry. We don't know where you got this idea that we're spies, but we're not spies. We're just honest brothers here to buy food so our families don't starve." And Joseph says, "Well, maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let most of you go. I'll sell you your grain, and I'll let most of you go home, but I'm going to keep a hostage. You want to see your brother again? You bring me this baby that you say you have at home, this baby brother. You bring him to me, and then I'll know that you're telling me the truth, and I'll let the hostage go, and we'll go forward. This will just all be a misunderstanding, but that's how it's going to play. And so I'm going to take you as hostage," and he points to Simeon. And again, the brothers think this is God paying them back, because it had been Simeon, remember, who had the idea about first killing and then selling Joseph. So Simeon gets carted off to prison. And the other brothers have their sacks filled with grain. Joseph instructs his servants to put the boys' money back in the sacks. They tie the sacks off, the brothers put them on their animals, and they get out of Egypt as fast as they possibly can. They return to Canaan. When they get there, Dad says, "Where's Simeon?" And the brothers say, "Well, Pop, about that, we ran into this guy. It was really unpleasant. He thought we were spies. He kept Simeon as a hostage. In order for us to get Simeon back, we have to bring Benji." And Israel says, "Ain't gonna happen. I lost JoJo and I'm not losing Benji." Yeah, well, Pop, see, the thing you don't understand is if we don't bring Benji back, this guy is going to keep Simeon, right? The Simeon is gone. We bring Benji back, we get Simeon back, we all come home as happy. We don't bring Benji back to Egypt, we lose Simeon. We'll be down to Jojo and we'll be down to Simeon. And Israel says, I don't care. I can't do it. I can't lose Benjamin. He's the last son of my favorite wife, Rachel. There that is again. You see that ugliness right there? So there's no talking to him. He's not going to send Benji back. Simeon's in prison. Joseph's on his throne. Egypt's getting fed. The whole family and all the servants, they have these sacks of grain that the brothers brought back from Egypt. They open the sacks, they find their money. They're afraid. Oh no, now he's going to think we're thieves too. They start to eat the grain. And soon they get near the bottom of those sacks. And they say to Pop, we got to go buy more grain. No. Pop, we have to go buy more grain. No. Pop, we're going to die. I know you don't want to lose Benji, but Benji's going to die. We're all going to die if we don't get more grain. That's where we'll leave it for today. Next week, we'll pick up the rest of the story. I want you to remember this thing that Joseph knew, that just because things are hard, even if things are awful, it doesn't mean that God has let go of you. It doesn't mean that God has forgotten you. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care about you. The promises God made to you in your baptism are eternal. That there's no way that God can forget you. There's no way that God can let you go. Bad things happen in the world for all kinds of different reasons. As you get older, you and me or you and your pastors that you have then will talk about some of those other things. But there's all kinds of reasons in this broken world why things happen that are bad or that are painful. It doesn't mean God has let you go. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. God loved Joseph. God loved Joseph when he was being a brat. God loved Joseph when he was being sold. God loved Joseph when he was accused of crimes he didn't commit. God loved Joseph when he was in prison for crimes that he didn't commit. And God had a plan to restore Joseph and to keep promises to Joseph and to Joseph's family that are not touched by any circumstances. So you, whatever's going on in your life, just know that in your baptism, God made a promise over you that cannot be broken because it's God's promise. All you need to do is cling to it. And God will take care of you. God has a plan and a purpose for your life. You just hang on. We'll get together again next week and we'll finish this story about Joseph. You take care. Bye-bye now.